Okay, good afternoon, and thank you so much for joining our panel on the future of crypto payments. My name is Melisande Mouwal, publisher of The Papers, a leading online publication on all things fintech and payments, and I'm so excited to moderate this panel. Since the introduction of Bitcoin 12 years ago, cryptocurrencies have been announced as potential game changers in mainstream digital commerce. As of today, crypto payments, though, remain still small and niche. However, we are now at a turning point where several forces of disruption and market initiatives have accelerated acceptance and usage of cryptocurrencies in C2B commerce. And later this month, Nuvei, a frontrunner PSP in enabling crypto transactions, will publish an excellent white paper on the future of C2B crypto payments. This white paper was commissioned through Flagship Advisory Partners. And in this panel, we will address some of the themes that were covered in this paper. So we will address consumer adoption and merchant acceptance and hurdles to be taken for crypto to be widely adopted. We will discuss some developments that are driving adoptions with a deep dive into NFTs. And we will discuss the role of traditional payment players like PSPs, banks, schemes, fintech in the new crypto payments universe. So we have an excellent panel here today with decades of experience in both traditional and crypto payments. So it would be great if you could tell us a little bit more about yourself. Rafael, could you please kick off?
Yeah, of course. So just a little bit about myself. I'm Rafael Tetro, SVP Merchant Services, working for Nuvei for the past 10 years now. Nuvei is the preferred payment service provider for some of the world's most thriving brands, and I'm mostly responsible for the onboarding process of merchants from various verticals with a specification on the fintech niche.
Cool. Nimrod.
Hi everyone, Nimrod Leavi, founder and CEO of Simplex, recently purchased by Nuvei, so now Simplex is a Nuvei company. I've been in crypto for about a decade, started Simplex about 8 years ago. Happy to be here.
Great. Joel.
Yes, I'm Joel Van Arsdale. I'm managing partner of Flagship Advisory Partners, which is a payments consultancy and M&A advisory boutique focused on payments and fintech, and I'm based in Amsterdam.
Cool. Simon.
Hi, I'm Simon Hudson, founder and CEO of Cheese. Cheese is a NFT multimedia and entertainment company that is helping photographers bring their NFT to the blockchain. We're a startup. We launch our product next month, and we're aiming to become the main portal that all photographers will turn NFTs from photos to. So excited to be here and excited to be alongside all you guys on the panel.
Cool. Volan.
Hi, Volan Solov. I'm COO at Glozal. We're a music and entertainment focused NFT and blockchain company. And we're in this panel with you guys.
Great, thank you. So Joel, could you tell us a bit more about the white paper and kick off the discussion for us?
Yeah, it was a pleasure to work recently with Nuvei on the commission of a white paper. So we conducted both secondary and primary research on the state of crypto payments. So our focus was really not on peer-to-peer movement of crypto, but rather on consumer to business mainstream payments. So all the things you would typically think about in terms of e-commerce or mobile commerce, obviously focus on digital mediums. And we, after a couple months of research, published a white paper with our findings, talking about where crypto payments have come from, where they are today, and what we expect going forward. And I think there's a few obvious conclusions when you start to dig into the state of crypto payments. One is that it's still relatively small today and relatively nascent. So although crypto has really boomed as a store of value and as an investment vehicle, it's still trailing mainstream payments in terms of use cases, acceptance, and readiness. So to put that in perspective, you know, cryptocurrencies are now worth more than $2 trillion in terms of overall value. And when you look at total annual C2B e-commerce, for example, in 2021, this will be more than $10 trillion of commerce. But payments being used for crypto this year will be limited to about 5 to 10 billion. And so it's a very small fraction of the overall world of e-commerce, and it's a very small portion of the value of cryptocurrencies. And the primary reason why it's not yet being used for mainstream commerce is really just a lack of acceptance, which is spurred by reluctance based on lack of regulatory clarity. And so we talked to a lot of mainstream merchants, and what they described is that they just weren't ready to accept crypto payments because they felt like the regulatory guidance wasn't clear enough to do so. And so I think we're now going through a period of great clarification of the regulations, and that might feel like a negative force of influence in the crypto world, but I think ultimately, this feels like always a story of 2 steps forward and 1 step backward. And so I think we're inevitably having to go through tighter enforcement of cryptocurrencies, but the upside of that, it will be greater clarity in the next 2 years. So I think once the regulatory clarity is established, I think we'll see a wave of expanded acceptance and also increasing usage. And as we look to the longer term, we're actually very optimistic about the future of crypto payments, because there are so many forces driving what we anticipate being much greater long-term usage. So the advent in recent years of stable coins, the upcoming introduction of central bank digital currencies, the rapid acceleration in use of NFTs. So there are many things, I think, driving the future use of crypto, and I think that's what we uncovered in the study. Is we don't know of how fast and when, but I think the future is bright, and we'll talk more about that during our panel.
Cool, thank you, Joel. Yeah, let's start with this consumer adoption and merchant acceptance. And to your point, it's still small, it's relatively nascent, but Rafael, what consumer segments or demographics and use cases are currently driving crypto payments in online commerce?
Yeah, so to answer the question, and if we can go back to the start, we need to remember that Bitcoin was originally designed as a medium of exchange. So eventually its impact was much broader, initiating or catalyzing a broad ecosystem of cryptocurrencies and blockchain application, of course. But in essence, the original objective was peer-to-peer payment system and a medium of exchange between 2 different parties. But today, cryptocurrencies still act mostly as a function of speculative assets or means of investment rather than medium of exchange. Due to several reasons, some is related to price volatility, processing speed, regulatory limitation, and user experience when making a payment. And we also know that cryptocurrencies are less suitable for payments as opposed to stable coins or central bank digital currencies due to that reasons which I've just mentioned. And in general, in terms of if we're taking a look, and this is going back to what Joel mentioned, if we're taking a look at the annual transaction volume, well, cryptocurrencies, they drag way behind the regular card schemes like Visa, MasterCard, UnionPay, ACH, Amex, etc. And to answer the question from what we're seeing in terms of what are the use cases that we have today, is we're seeing specific demographics which making payments when it comes to cryptocurrencies. So it's mostly men between the age of 24 to 44, where 69%, 70% of them hold it as a long-term investment, while only 27% actually plan to use it as means of paying for online transactions. So it's still considered to be more of means of investment rather than a way to exchange goods or services. And in terms of the industries that we're seeing, we're still talking about what is considered to be high-risk verticals more than anything, right? So we're seeing processing mostly coming from gaming, where some of the world's largest gaming operators do offer crypto payments today. We see it in the adult industry and a little bit in the digital context. So in mainstream, we still see that crypto payments are almost absent today. We do see it adopted by Microsoft, Starbucks, and a few other enterprises, but even they can vouch that it only comprises of less than a fraction of their overall processing. So it's still associated with high-risk verticals more than anything.
Yeah, and then I guess we're talking primarily on the more mature markets. But if you look into emerging markets, do you see any potential use cases? Because there's more payment problems and challenges to be solved, whether it's in sort of more in emerging markets. Do you see some interesting use cases there for crypto in general?
Yeah, so when we're talking about emerging markets, I think that we're talking about mostly about money remittances and the challenges that involves around money remittances. So I think that the biggest value proposition of crypto payments in emerging markets is specifically associated with the unbanked, right? So if we're taking a look at the money remittances sector today, there's a big pain for some of the users where they're paying high transaction fees for money remittances, high exchange rate fees, and of course the processing time is around 3 days. So if we take a look at crypto payments, wallet-to-wallet transfers, I think we have a big advantage for many of unbanked population in these emerging markets to take usage of cryptocurrencies exchanges in order to make sure that they evolve and improve the process and experience today.
Yeah, and I guess that could be also beyond remittances, but also for potentially payouts to gig economy or all kinds of use cases that could potentially interesting there. Nimrod, you are in this space for over a decade, and I recall in our prep calls that you mentioned that adoption has been slower than you initially forecasted or expected. So let's discuss some of the reasons, because security seems to be a major impediment to broader consumer demand for crypto payments. So do you believe that crypto is fundamentally less safe than banking and payments? And is the security challenge easy to solve?
It's a big question. I think that it's not a matter of more security issues. They're just different. It's a matter of more responsibility, just like open source. If you look at open source software and the problems and the benefits, at the end, the benefits outweigh the problems. And I think this will be the case here as well. It's definitely, it's leaving more of the responsibility in the hands of the users. Just like when the open source is talking about free software, it's free as in freedom of speech, not as in free beer. So here as well, it requires some responsibility. I mean, you are the sole person responsible for your own funds. Many people right now at least find it a bit difficult to handle. I just had a similar conversation with one of our employees, and he said, it makes sense to me that we're limited with usage of our funds. I told him, yeah, because you're used to it. But let's say I would have told you, yeah, you can drive without insurance, but only in daylight. So in nighttime, you're not allowed to drive. Would that be perceived as something that makes sense? And I don't think so. I think that at the end of the day, I'm all for encouraging people to be more responsible with their funds, understand what they're doing, not just being using financial services as black boxes. I think that if you right now you accumulate fines to the financial systems, it's probably way over the market cap of crypto. Just very recently, Robinhood, which is the favorable usage case for American investors, got fined by something like $70 million So I do think it's an issue. I think it will be solved. We're doing many insecure things in our lives, including driving cars, because they are affecting our lives for the better. I think that it's incredible what crypto can empower us to do. If you look at just global transactions between organizations, if you could have just completely ignored the time and cost of international transactions, even FX, FX is, I don't have the numbers themselves, but it's probably in the billions per year. So you can save all of that. And just like our lives pretty much transitioned a couple of decades ago with voice over IP rather than copper wire infrastructure. I personally remember paying, something like, $1,500 per month for the phone bill. And today it's crazy. Like for the kids, I don't know, it was like $7 a month.
Yeah.
And that's all thanks to the telcos moving to a different infrastructure. So I'm not a libertarian. I'm not saying, we should get rid of the government and get rid of the banks. But I do think that if financial systems improve themselves in, 5 orders of magnitude by moving to operate on top of these rails, it's going to benefit all of us.
Yeah, so there's definitely benefits, but what has to happen for cryptocurrencies to go mainstream? And what do regulators need to solve for crypto payments to be, or it's maybe beyond regulators, but there's obviously other hurdles as well. But what is your take on that, Nimrod?
I definitely think that regulators should understand that it's coming and they should accept it rather than fight it, especially the ones in the US. There's a slight tendency to overregulate, I think, or perhaps not let, perhaps some other mechanisms like sandboxes. Fact is that digital yuan out of China is here. If the US and the West will continue blocking the evolution of digital currencies, soon we'll find ourselves in a world where digital yuan is de facto currency used in Africa, other developing countries, and then and soon after we'll be using it because it will be digital and easy. And that's not necessarily the development that we are willing to accept. I think that at the end of the day, we would all benefit a lot from a decentralized global digital currency. If you compare it to the identity wars between Facebook Connect and Google ID, and I forget what it was called with Microsoft, none of them would let the other party win, because then they will be in full control. I think that would be the case here in currencies. At the end of the day, the world itself would benefit from a decentralized digital currency. Yeah. So I think that regulators should understand that and work towards that instead of some of the work is very crucial, right, in protecting users from scam and all. But I think that they should also take a strategic look on the world and try to work towards that as well.
Yeah. Any other panelists that would like to weigh into this comment of Nimrod? Yeah, Volen.
Yes, I would just like to provide a couple of practical examples actually that are currently taking place which have actually enabled the adoption and proliferation of cryptocurrencies on both the local and national level. And Miami, where Glozo is based out of, is a great example of a US city that's kind of championing the cause and leading by example of sorts, which is kind of forcing local courts, state courts, federal courts, and regulators to really take usage of crypto on a local and state government scale into consideration. And currently there's a bill pending in the state of Florida to kind of bring some level of regulation, but not to the space, just to kind of enable, let's say, local governments like the city of Miami to take investments in crypto, utilize crypto payments for all, you could pay your bill in Miami with crypto now. And I think it's that kind of localized leadership which then pushes the narrative on a state and then national level. And the second practical example I'll give is El Salvador, which Glozo has strong ties with and is actually working on establishing a direct connection between El Salvador and Miami as two of the crypto kind of leaders in the Latin American space currently. And El Salvador is a similar situation where it was a top-down approach. Once the government kind of came on board to the idea, saw the benefit to actually empower its population and maybe prevent them from being reliant on unstable currencies that are currently in circulation there. It happened, and it happened rather quickly. The biggest, I think, gap that's currently I've noticed, and especially both in Miami as well as El Salvador, is an education gap, right? Where the top-down approach of the government needs to be adequately communicated to the population at large. And there needs to be some kind of information, at least passed out, some kind of town hall sessions where, like you said, those people that are not banked, that maybe don't even have access to cell phones, they could come and be educated as to why and how blockchain and cryptocurrencies will benefit them. Because what we've seen is once that process takes place, then adoption happens. Currently, El Salvador, over 3 million people have downloaded their Chivo wallet, which again was part of the government's rollout initiative. They developed the wallet to be used nationwide, made it available as a free download to everybody in the country, and then gave them an incentive to use it by uploading $30 worth of Bitcoin on the wallet for each person's account upon creation. And that really kind of spurred that the adoption by the masses once the government and some of the regulators are on board. So those are just a couple of practical examples that I think will be setting an example for the rest of the world really moving forward.
Yes, great, thank you. And let's talk a little bit more about the CBDC. So you mentioned China, Nimrod, launching the digital yuan that will be more prominent next year during the games. But Joel, do you think that this development in China will catalyze all major governments to push into CBDCs, and not only the El Salvador's or in the emerging markets, but also some more major markets?
Yeah, I think China has very clear motivation here to try to push international trade away from its dependence on the US dollar, which comes with it, all kinds of restrictions and roadblocks to free commerce. And so I think they have a vested interest in really leading the charge on this one and to establish their own digital currency that's widely accepted, in particular for international trade. And so I think the motivation is clear. And I think if you're other major economies, like the Eurozone or the US, you have an obvious motivation to not fall too far behind, because there are advantages to digital currencies relative to fiat when it comes to cross-border trade in particular. And so I do think that governments will have a natural motivation to keep up. And so I think that's kind of good for everyone. I think it's a virtuous circle of innovation and demand. And so the question is really, can these CBDCs coexist with other forms of digital currencies, with stable coins, with cryptocurrencies, with NFTs? And I think our viewpoint is clearly yes, that in fact, we do see CBDCs stimulating the broader enablement and acceptance of digital currencies more broadly, because quite frankly, they are riding on similar technologies, albeit somewhat different, but also very different infrastructures than traditional fiat-based commerce. And so I think, the rising tide rises all, floats all ships kind of dynamic. Although, again, clearly we're going through this period of some positives and some negative influences in terms of the influence of governments. But I think as we establish regulatory clarity from governments and as CBDCs, lay the path for broader enablement, I think you will see all other forms of digital currencies also benefiting.
Yeah, clear. So let's talk a little bit more about, the new digital commerce ecosystem, the so-called NFTs, because in the past 6 months, these NFTs have exploded to the forefront of digital commerce, representing an early example of truly crypto-native consumer digital commerce use cases. And this month, I think it was last week, the Global Research Division of the Bank of America described itself bullish about the wider crypto industry, including DeFi and NFT. So let's look a little bit more into these NFTs. Simon, can you explain our audience what is exactly an NFT, and could you elaborate a bit more on use cases beyond games and CryptoPunks, and maybe also lead us into the role of NFTs in photography?
Yeah, sure. It's an interesting question that gets asked a lot, and I think depending on what your understanding of this space is, depends on how you understand it. NFT, the way that I explain it, is very simply put, compressing the transfer steps for ownership. So if, for example, I'm wanting to transfer ownership from me to Joel, let's say it be a title deed for my house. At the moment, the steps involved are huge. There's lots of steps, there's lots of people involved, but by integrating technology like blockchain technology that allows you to transfer the ownership very quickly and very easily, because the blockchain is transparent, it's trackable, and everybody can see it. I think that Forlan said he was involved with music, NFTs, and things like this. And again, it depends on the sector that you're in. The way that NFTs for me, and what really resonates with me, is that about 23, 24 years ago, we were introduced to the JPEG and the MP3. Pre-JPEG, pre-MP3, it was about going and taking your negatives down to the local store, asking them to print them. You give a physical copy. If you want to reproduce them or you want to send them to somebody, it's in a very physical asset. JPEG came about, and then now we don't even call it a JPEG. We just say, please send me a photo. That's done on WhatsApp, email, text message. Again, the same with MP3s. If you wanted to share music and you wanted to transfer the ownership from a CD from me to Nimrod, I would have to sell it or ship it or whatever. Now MP3s allow me to actually just send a link or stream that across. NFTs really is the same. Rather than compressing a photo from a physical to a digital, or a music song from a song to an MP3, an NFT, in my view, is the compression of ownership. So if I want to basically have an asset that I own and send it across, rather than all these steps taken, like selling a house, it's just simply about sending it across the blockchain. So I think that depending on who you are and about blockchain technology to start with, because obviously an NFT is an asset that is wrapped with a token to be compatible on a blockchain. It really depends on what your interest is, as opposed to how you see NFTs. I think that the gaming industry and the kind of digital art industry were already involved in this. So it's, going on to a game and buying a skin or a sword or a power up became a very natural progression into this NFT world. And then you see platforms like Axie Infinity and all of this that's on the blockchain that are actually now becoming people's careers and livelihoods. People are actually Axie Infinity breeders, and that's what they do for their job. So I think it's fantastic as to what's out there. I do think, again, going back to what Nimrod said about the kind of the adoption and about how people understand this, like he said, a car isn't safe, but if I'm to walk 20 miles down the road or get in a car, I'm going to choose the car. If I'm going to be wanting to send you some money and I go to the bank, or I go to a wire, or I whatever wire, send you a check, or I can go and ask for your ETH wallet and transact it to you. It's about ease, and it's about being able to use things that save you time. Time is valuable, and when we understand it and the penny drops, we use it. So I think that with NFTs, my personal take is that at the moment the barriers to entry are extremely high. It's quite confusing. There's a lot of kind of exploration you need. You need in Ethereum, MetaMask. Do you want to go onto Polygon? Do you want to go onto Solana? Do you want to now go on to BNB, Cardano? All these different chains and all this understanding. Then about purchasing it, then you get asked about gas fees. So the knowledge that you have to just even be in this space requires a lot of research. So I think that what you have to do is kind of spend that time to research. But once that changes, the same as when you used to want to listen to an MP3, now we have them on our iPhones and Spotify. But if you remember back in the day, MP3 players were quite rare and it was quite expensive, but now it's become mainstream. Again, the same as what Nimrod said, phone calls, so cheap. Back in the day, it was hundreds and thousands of dollars a month, but now it's tens or 20. So I think adoption barriers need to come down. And also I think as well, there needs to be a lot more interoperability between the various chains. So at the moment, it's very siloed. You have different chains. You can't kind of cross-sell between them. There are some companies doing it, but it's very difficult. So I think there's a lot of challenges ahead of us. Bringing it to Cheese into what we're trying to achieve is we're trying to remove those barriers to bring people the ability to mint their photos on the blockchain. We've opted to use Flow as our blockchain of choice. They're one of our partners too. And the reason we've done that is the minting costs and the gas fees are extremely low. They are built by the creators of CryptoKitties, Dapper Labs, to really supply the need and demand for NFT developers, and that's who we are. So we've opted to go for Flow. The beauty about that is that we can offer wallets, access to the chain through Face ID, text, email, what you'd expect to see. There's no other wallets needed. It's a 360 service. And I think that there's a lot of money that's being lost for photographers in this space. They can't track their digital photography. They don't know who's owning it, who's using it, where it's been printed, etc. So NFTs and the blockchain, I feel, is a way to bring that money back to the creator and the photographer. And our goal really at Cheese is to become the central platform for them to do that. I hope that answers the question or not. I talk a lot when I get excited, so apologies about that.
Long question, long answer. But so you try to sort of, bring down the barriers of entry for photographers to mint their artwork on the blockchain. But how is that? How do you sort of create that marketplace for buyers of stuff to be able to buy that or to use other means than crypto payments? How do you sort of lower the barrier of entry?
It's a good question. Our focus is that we're mobile first. So we are a mobile app that will allow you to purchase and trade and sell your NFTs on iOS and Android. Instagram even, I think today, only allows you to upload images through the app. People are used to taking photos on their phone. Camera quality is improving every single release of an iPhone 13 or a Samsung 922 or whatever they're on now. But there's an awful lot of kind of synergies between the mobile phone and photography. So we're hoping to remove some of the barriers by giving people that ability to actually mint their photos directly from their phone, and buyers to browse and purchase again directly from their phone. Companies like Simplex and Nuvei will help with our on and off ramps and will help us get the money from people's wallets out and in. And obviously, it's all needed to make this ecosystem in this 360 solution work. So I think that, again, there's a lot of understanding. A couple of our partners, they're quite, old school in what they do, and even they want educating, and after 2 or 3 calls still need to be able to understand what's going on. We spend, I think it was Joel and the other guys that mentioned about the education, and to be honest, we spend most of our time educating people, and I think that will continue. That was the case when mobile apps came out and websites, and people. There's a video somewhere I saw on Twitter the other day when I think it was CBS News said, we now have this electronic mail, or you can reach us on the worldwide internet web. And it's like, you look at it and they're like, is this going to work? What is this? But when you go back in time, it was only 20 years ago, 25, 30 years ago. And you look back and think, blimey, like we've come so far. So soon people will be selling their houses as NFTs. People will be selling cars as NFTs. I believe BMW just acquired an NFT startup. So, your VIN numbers, your title deeds will all be as NFTs. For creators, for producers, for songwriters, again, a whole new world to enter where they can track and earn revenue. Fifth sale. So for us, we've decided to go with photography. A picture paints 1,000 words, as they say. A photo kind of acts as the front cover of a book. So predominantly we're starting with photography, hence the name Cheese. But, I think this world is so exciting and so new, we don't know what's around the corner.
No. Thanks, Simon. So let's go into music. Clozo is also about to launch a new music stream service, if I understand correctly. Could you elaborate a bit more on what is it you saw from musicians, and also to the point of this education? How do you sort of bring, fans and musicians, could they help educating the community, the consumers?
Absolutely. So actually, as Simon mentioned, NFTs are a new way to really, for creators of all genres, to distribute and monetize their creations and their content digitally. It creates an entire new universe that brings power back to those creators, as opposed to having to rely on a lot of the current third-party distributors, essentially. And by no means am I trying to, do we actually try to bash or compete directly with the streaming services? We understand why they came about, and they are the current market trend. However, we see NFTs as an opportunity for creators to really take back the lion's share of the value in their creations and control distribution directly to their consumers, aka their fans. And as Simon mentioned, an NFT is essentially a digital certificate of ownership that lives on the blockchain and is immutable. So it streamlines a lot of the usual kind of very arduous and burdensome processes in splitting rights or distributing proceeds amongst different rights holders. Currently, there's copyright laws in place. NFTs actually, and the smart contracts that govern them on the back end are a way to essentially streamline all of these accounting and distribution of funds processes across all creators simultaneously in real time digitally. And it's all tracked on the blockchain. So the applications are endless, to be quite frank with you. Video games are just an example of a metaverse where NFTs are being used on a daily basis and can be. The next wave is going to be, we believe, actually the entertainment industry. That's why we started looking into music NFTs initially, and then we've currently actually expanded to just collaborations with digital artists and musicians, and we're trying to bridge that gap between the two worlds, because the digital artists actually started this space, and they're the ones that started utilizing it and really brought it to prominence. Education is a huge aspect of it, and the community that's already using NFTs gets it, but the 95% of, I'd say, artists fans and music fans in general don't just yet. That's why, again, similar to Simon, a lot of what we do is educating not just the artists, the distribution companies, the publishers, because once everybody understands that this is essentially a way for the creators to take care of all the responsibilities to you automatically, almost digitally, and everybody that's involved in a transaction or in the creation of a piece of content can be compensated in real time, essentially. It really creates a value proposition for the entire industry. Currently, a musician needs to stream about 400,000 streams per month to make about $1,000 per month. If you stream about $1 million streams per month, you're looking at 4,000 to 5,000, and then you have to split that with managers, labels, everybody else. So it's an endless, vicious cycle where, especially, and COVID actually brought all of this to the forefront because once artists and musicians were not able to go to galleries, go on tour, that's the lion's share of their livelihood. That's where they make the majority of their earnings. And so NFTs really came out as they've been in existence prior to this, but they came to prominence as an alternative method for artists to distribute their craft digitally to all their fans around the world in real time. And so we've taken this challenge on, and we see it as the future. Frankly, I will tell you, a lot of the labels are actually currently taking it seriously as well. Almost every major label has a task force in place exploring NFTs, looking into their long-term applications, and getting involved, frankly, because it's here to stay. I think people will see that eventually. And honestly, to educate the public, you got to start with these creators and the influencers, right? Because everybody else will follow. Once your creatives, the cool people, quote unquote, are showing you that this is safe for them to use, so they're choosing it as a method of distribution for their content, their fans will naturally migrate. And there's already been a few test cases and examples of this taking place. Some very successful, some not so successful. I think it's a strategic play as to how you position a new means of distribution of content to a fan base that is not fully educated in it yet. But again, I do believe that NFTs are kind of a gateway for people that are not used to blockchain and cryptocurrencies to at least start getting comfortable with the idea and start getting familiar with how all of this works. What is a wallet? How does an NFT live on the blockchain? How can I transfer it? What does it mean to me? Also, I think the fact that NFTs are one of the first mediums of content distribution that actually enabled the content buyer to generate some value for themselves out of that content as well is something that once fans understand that concept, it gives them a personal incentive as well. Absolutely. So
Foden, I would like to go to the next topic because of the time. We could talk about
Absolutely,
NFTs
yes.
for hours, and I hope there will be more webinars to explore this space because it's definitely also in terms of digital commerce.
I will just add one caveat for anybody that would want to look into NFTs. There was a very good TED talk on how NFTs are the future of the internet, and 10-minute watch, and it'll clear up a lot of questions for everybody.
I guess also a good to watch for the current players in the industry, PSBs, fintechs, bank schemes, because
absolutely.
How do you see, this is a question for the payments guys in this panel, how do you see the future role of PSBs, bank schemes, financial intermediaries in this new crypto payments universe? Will they lose or drive relevance? What is your take on that?
Well, if you look at Visa as a case study, I mean, they're clearly being very aggressive and on the forefront of the drive for payment, mainstreaming of crypto payments. And it's clearly good strategy, I think, on their part, because they're a network for exchange of value more broadly than just the way in which you think about credit cards and travel and paying for groceries. So I think they're obviously trying to stay relevant in a market in which fiat currencies are potentially marginalized, and where banks are potentially marginalized, and when transactions look completely different and their services are informational rather than currency based. And so it's obviously very beneficial for the broader ecosystem to have companies like Visa and MasterCard, as well as others like Facebook and Square pushing momentum there. But I think it's clear that if you're a global service provider for commerce, cryptocurrencies could be a very good thing in the longer run.
Any comments, Nimrod, or to weigh into the future of Nimrod? You're still muted, I think.
I think that it's very clear to everyone that crypto is the future, and that's why I am so excited to be working with Nuvei, and that's why I think it's so admirable by Nuvei to take such a huge leap way before all of the other payment companies still, kind of compose themselves around the crypto ecosystem, understanding that it's going to be here, and it's a smart move to embrace the future rather than fight it, or rather, just to try and ride on it, but rather Nuvei trying to lead the way and integrate more and more crypto into our daily lives in payment, and basically be the change we want to see in the world. So I think that's admirable, and very much excited about it.
Yeah. And what is sort of the last question? What do you think in terms of time? When do you think this will be more widely adopted, crypto payments, whether that's in NFTs or in DeFi or in...
I think we're already seeing it. I think that, the last move by BitPay enabling regular payments in the Verizon point of sales. I think it's an incredible move forward. I think that what we're doing with issuing Visa debit cards to our partners, the combination, load your account with crypto which you just sold, and then on the other side you can use the crypto from within the card. So basically it's already a full cycle, just a matter of how much faster the adoption will run.
Okay, well, thank you. We are at the end of our time. I would like to thank all the speakers, Nimrod, Raphael, Joel, Foden, Simon. It was great talking to you today, and I will definitely look into the TED Talk, Foden. And have a great rest of the day. Thank you so much, audience, for tuning in, and have a good day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
You all. Take care.